C'est à Sétif, dans l'est de l'Algérie, que la grand-mère paternelle de Lina Soualem a vécu. À l'âge de 15 ans, elle se marie avec Mabrouk Soualem. 2 ans plus tard, en 1954, ils décident de quitter l'Algérie et s'installent en France. Ensemble, ils avaient traversé une vie d'immigrés. Une vie où le silence, la blessure et le déchirement riment avec le quotidien. Après 62 ans de vie commune, Aïcha et Mabrouk se sont séparés. Leur petite fille, Lina, a mémorisé en images leur histoire, comme un devoir de transmission pour casser cet élan de séparation qui a commencé par la terre natale. Le film documentaire est une œuvre très intime mais aussi universelle. Pendant le tournage de ce film documentaire, le grand-père Mabrouk Soualem a quitté ce monde. Aujourd'hui, Lina Soualem accompagne son film en Algérie pour sa sortie nationale le jeudi 9 décembre. Un retour aux sources provoqué par le grand écran.
Hello, good evening. This is Al24 News. I'm Rahim Kashur, and to the headlines. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas arrived in Algiers on Sunday on a 3-day state visit at the invitation of his counterpart Abdel Majid Tebboune. Aung San Suu Kyi sentences to 4 years in prison. A former memories leader was found guilty of charges including inciting public unrest and violating COVID-19 rules. Prime Minister Manasseh Sugavari has survived the motion of no confidence in Solomon Islands Parliament after the majority of MPs backed the leader. Hello again and welcome those who are today's headline. Warm and official welcome was extended to the President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, who began a 3-day state visit to Algeria on Sunday afternoon. The warm welcome reflects to deep relation existing between the two brotherly countries and Algeria's unwavering support for Palestinian cause. The 21 cannon salute shoots rang out in honor of this distinguished guest of Algeria. As it seems, President Abbas was greeted on his arrival at Houari Boumediene International Airport by the President of the Republic as well as the Foreign Minister Mtala Mamra, as well as by the highest officials of the state. The national anthems of the two countries, those of Algeria as well as the Palestinian anthem. having listened to the national anthem, the two presidents reviewed detachments of the Republican Guard who paid them an honor as 21 cannon salute chancelleries of its honor of distinguished guests of Algeria. As a reminder, President Tebboune has repeatedly emphasized that Algerian unwavering support for the Palestinian cause and the struggle of the Palestinian people for the recovery of all their plundered rights. He further called on the international community to assume its historic responsibilities for the violation by the Zionist occupation of the international legality and maneuvers to impose the policy of the status quo, to evade its commitment and to undermine the project of building a sovereign a state of Palestinian, a state that's also affirmed that the resolution of the question passes by proclamation of an independent Palestinian state outer the borders 1967 with Al-Quds as a capital. To a different matter, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with the Algerian Foreign Minister Ramtala Mamra and the 53 African countries representatives under the same roof of manage to agree on vision and plan to strengthen the relationship between China and Africa in the modern era. Let's have a look over this meeting.
In this meeting, our foreign ministers met and had a very good discussion about enhancing our bilateral relations. In the future, China is ready to support Algeria to play a better and more important role on the regional level and work with Algeria to build a better future to our relations, which serves the common interests of China, Algeria, and Africa.
During a special visit of all 24 news cameras to the Embassy of South Africa accredited to Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic charge d'affaires, Mr. Dr. Solo Patrick Rankamis had this to say regarding to the celebration of the 8th death anniversary of Nelson Mandela.
The celebration of the passing of Nelson Mandela is a key moment in terms of the international struggle against racism, inequality, and exploitation, because President Nelson Mandela sacrificed part of his life in the fight against apartheid in South Africa. And we should remember that it was during the fight against apartheid that solidarity countries, including Algeria, played important role in terms of ensuring that freedom and liberation in South Africa is achieved. And it is from this experience that the world today is pushing for a fight against racism in all its form and manifestation. And we should also take time as we celebrated the passing of Nelson Mandela to recall how Algeria played a key role in terms of its support to the liberation struggle in South Africa. We have seen that when Mandela was released, Algeria was one of the first countries that he visited to say thank you for the contribution that Algeria has made in the liberation of South Africa. And that served as the basis for the strong bilateral and political relations between South Africa and Algeria in the post-apartheid era.
Our dear colleague Nadia Kazmi has made a full interview, so stay tuned for an exclusive interview with Charge d'Affaires Dr. Solo Patrick Rankamis tomorrow.
The Embassy of South Africa in Algeria is also accredited to the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. And as part of our diplomatic engagement with Western Sahara, the Sahrawi people, we are in solidarity supporting the people and the government of Western Sahara in its quest for liberation, in its quest for territorial integrity and independence. It is for that reason that we as the mission conduct regular visits to the camps to see firsthand what is going on in the camps, and also to get an inside understanding of the plight of the Sahrawi people. In addition, we also encourage a working visit by our principals to the camps. Recently, Minister Naledi Pandor visited the camps as part of the South Africa solidarity with the people and the government of Western Sahara. And as the mission, we have since last year initiated a people-to-people support program wherein we are collecting voluntary contributions from individuals in a form of educational support material.
Yesterday, the 5th of December, was the beginning of National Volunteer Week in Algeria. And the International Volunteer Day, this campaign was launched by Ministry of Youth and Sports with aim of spreading the culture of volunteering from the High National School of Tourism and Hotels. Marwa Bil'i will give us more details.
Algeria celebrates the International Volunteer Day by launching various activities and workshops as part of the National Volunteer Week in Algiers, under the supervision of Secretary General of the Ministry of Youth and Sports. This comes to consolidate the culture of volunteering and strengthen the spirit of citizenship among young people, as well as sensitize them to participate in all humanitarian aid. This volunteer work falls within the framework of the implementation of the government's action plan, which demands the need to give an important place to volunteer work with the participation of young people and all groups of society, especially civil one.
This edition is very special because we usually give the medal, the volunteering medal, to the active association, the brilliant ones. But this year we had the President's Award that was given to those associations instead of the medal.
The importance of organizing this humanitarian work was stressed by establishing a national charter and a law that defines volunteers' work and rights and the tasks assigned to them in an organized framework.
The Ministry of Youth and Sport accompanied the association at many stages during its activity. As you know, most of the employees of the Ministry of Youth and Sports are volunteers from the sports movement or the youth movement. We at the ministerial level work to institutionalize this volunteering activity and to find a legal provision which may frame all aspects of any volunteering activity. We also aim to found a national volunteering network. All of this is part of the government's action plan and implementation of the program of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune.
The event, which took place in the Higher National School of Tourism and Hotels, situated in Ain Benyan, Algiers, was marked by the presence of many important national figures along with young volunteers.
On this occasion of the 5th of December, the National Day of Volunteers, the association organized this event in order to honor all the volunteers in Algeria under the patronage of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, in which he encouraged this event and helped in giving it a great importance. The Algerian youth participated a lot in volunteer works, especially this period due to the coronavirus pandemic and the incidents Algeria witnessed this year. It is worth mentioning that Algeria is involved in many international volunteer works, for example at the level of the Arab League and the African Union.
It's worth mentioning that during this event, Algeria launched the National Volunteering Center. The organizers from the National Association of Volunteer Work displayed different presentations of various activities and projects the association is planning to achieve. The ceremony was concluded by an award ceremony delivered to the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on his behalf by his advisor to the Presidency of the Republic, as well as to different laureates for their remarkable achievements.
After Midsummer on Java Island eruption on Saturday, rescuers are looking for survivors in villages covered by serene ash. According to emergency officials, 14 people have died and scores have been injured. One witness in the adjoining La Manja district filmed police and military officials digging victims out with their bare hands. Houses and automobiles were completely submerged. Volcanic ash blanketed at least 11 villages in Lumajana East, Java. At least 56 people have been hurt. Many of them have suffered burns as a result of mistaking the hot mud flow for water. Solomon Island Prime Minister survived no confidence motion after accusing Taiwan's agents of working on a coin bid to remove him from the political scene and decision-making in country. This comes at a time when Australia and New Zealand are sending military troops to Ireland and continuity of anti-government rights in the country. The Prime Minister Manasseh Sugavare, who is now in his fourth stint, announced that he is not willing to resign, which is the aim of Taiwan agents, explaining that he didn't do anything wrong. China on Monday threatens to take firm countermeasures if US proceeds with diplomatic boycott of February Beijing Winter Olympic Games. Marwa clarified.
Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian accused U.S. politicians of grandstanding over the issue of not sending dignitaries to attend the event that China hopes will showcase its economic development and technological prowess. Speaking to reporters at a daily briefing, Zhao said such a move would be an outright political provocation, but gave no details on how China would retaliate.
Those politicians who clamour to boycott for political self-interest are showing off and hyping things up. No one cares whether they come or not. It has no influence on Beijing's success in hosting the Winter Olympics.
U.S. President Joe Biden has said he is considering a boycott under which American athletes would still compete, and an announcement is expected this week. Supporters of such a step cite China's poor record on human rights as justification, saying China is using the Games to whitewash its ill treatment of civil rights activists, political dissidents, and ethnic minorities.
Sir, do you support a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics?
Something we're considering.
The possibility of a diplomatic boycott comes as the U.S. attempts to stabilize turbulent relations with Beijing, even as it maintains a tough approach toward trade frictions and a conflict over China's actions on Taiwan, human rights, Hong Kong, and the South China Sea. Beijing has mounted a stiff response to all U.S. criticism, denouncing them as interference in its internal affairs and slapping visa bans on American politicians it regards as anti-China. It wasn't clear who the U.S. might have sent to Beijing for the Games, and Zhao's comments appear to indicate that China has not extended any invitations.
Aung San Suu Kyi has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for incitement and breaking COVID restriction, the first verdict to be handed down to Myanmar's ousted leader since the military coup in February. Nabil Khazini clarified.
Aung San Suu Kyi sentenced to 4 years in prison after she was found guilty of charges including inciting public unrest and violating COVID-19 rules. San Suu Kyi received 2 years in prison on each of the two charges. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate faces multiple other charges of corruption, violations of Telecoms Law, and a State Secrets Act. Altogether carry a maximum sentence of more than a century in prison. Few years ago, Myanmar, under the rule of San Suu Kyi, knew persecutions of the Rohingya, who represent a large Muslim group in a Buddhist majority country. The persecutions forced over 1 million Rohingya to flee to other countries. Most of them fled to Bangladesh, resulting in the creation of the world's largest refugee camp. Former President Win Myint was also jailed for 4 years under the same charges. Aung San Suu Kyi lost power after the military ruled over Myanmar following a coup on February the 1st. Since then, at least 354 opponents of the coup have also been sentenced to jail or to death. Myanmar has been in turmoil for months. Protests paralyzed the country and the situation seems to be unstable.
A top commander belonging to a group of former Colombian rebels who rearmed following 2016 peace deal has been killed in an ambush in Venezuela. According to local media, Hernan Dario Vasquez, known as La Pieza, was reportedly shot dead in Venezuela's Aspur. His death has not been officially confirmed, and neither the Colombian nor the Venezuelan governments have confirmed the information. The Colombian military also told the media that it had no knowledge about the reported killing. Pope Francis wrapped up his visit to Greece on Monday by encouraging its young people to follow their dreams and not tempted by the consumerist Syrian of today that promise easy pleasure. More in this report.
Pope Francis says goodbye to Greece and returns to Rome. All in all, and before leaving, Francis met with students at a Catholic school in Athens in his final event of a 5-day visit to Cyprus and Greece that has been dominated by his concern for the dilemma of migrants seeking entry in Europe. Francis echoed the common theme he has raised with young people, encouraging them to stay fast in their faith even amid doubts and resist the temptation to pursue materialist goals. 2 immigrant students were among those who greeted the Pope, including an 18-year-old Syrian refugee, Aboud Gabro, who told the Pope of his family escaped from Aleppo in 2014 after a bomb exploded on their home. They finally arrived in Greece after a perilous boat crossing from Turkey. Francis listened to his story, a true modern-day odyssey, and expressed gratitude that he and his family had made it safely after. Francis is returning to the Vatican with some important pre-Christmas events on his agenda, a scheduled meeting with the members of a French commission that investigated sexual abuse in the French Catholic Church, also a scheduled meeting with the Canadian Indigenous people seeking a papal apology for abuse at Catholic-run residential schools, with Francis' own 25th birthday on December 17th. Pope Francis concludes his 35th international trip at the Athens International Airport, in which he met by the Greek Minister for Foreign Affairs, Nicholas Kotasias. They spoke for a couple of minutes in the airport long before saying a final goodbye.
Far-right candidate for the French presidential election, Eric Zemmour, on Sunday called on his supporters to change the course of history and move toward reclaiming France during his first rally in Paris in front of a large crowd. As the 63-year-old moved through the crowd on the stage, a man briefly grabbed him by the neck before security officer intervened. Local media report his wrist was injured and that his doctors have ordered 9 days of rest. To a different matter now, the coronavirus new variant Omicron is still spreading in Europe and all over the world. And dealing with this situation, each country has its own rules. These rules and these procedures in this paper.
The situation of COVID-19 is reaching further complications around the world, as cases of the new variant Omicron are surging in most of the world's countries. The latest measures taken by the Australian government have covered people of different ages. Australian nation's drugs regulator is expected to approve vaccinations of children between 5 and 11 years old. This vaccination measure will start as soon as January 10th. COVID-19 new variant Omicron has been detected in at least 17 states of the country since December 1st. This comes after the USA tightened its regulations for travelers to the USA and imposed testing and vaccination, as well as closing its borders with a number of African countries. Canada forced many of its companies to apply regular testing on their employees, as vaccinated employees are in an uncomfortable situation working with unvaccinated people. Jordanian court sentenced 5 senior health officials to 3 years of prison, accusing them of causing the death of 10 COVID-19 patients due to oxygen outage. Prime Minister Bashar al-Khawasana said his government bore full responsibility for the incident. In Brussels, clashes erupted on Sunday between police forces and citizens rejecting the measures, which include mask wearing, vaccines, and lockdown, imposed by the government in order to curb the spread of the COVID-19 new variant. Russian President Vladimir Putin is hoping for the World Health Organization to approve Russian vaccine Sputnik in order to take place of the COVAX program that will allow Russia to start exporting the vaccine in a broader way. In the Algerian concern, the director of Pasteur Institute stated that no Omicron cases have been detected in the country, and no cases were detected in 23 provinces. However, he stressed that the arrival of Omicron is just a matter of time.
The German newspaper Bild published on Saturday details of plan by Russia to invade Ukraine in light of the high level of tension on the borders between the two countries, based on NATO and Western intelligence circles, and questions about whether the world is on another brink of war in Europe. Hussein reports.
German news outlet Bild, which spoke to high-ranking military sources, said that Russia's war plans have been exposed, as it has been revealed that Vladimir Putin plans to use 175,000 troops in 3 phases to capture Ukraine. Bild said that Russian plans for war against Ukraine have been known since mid-October, and the US Foreign Intelligence and CIA were able to intercept Russian military communications, which were reviewed by NATO last November. According to information from high-ranking officers, Russian plans to invade Ukraine are ready, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has not yet decided whether they will be implemented or not. The newspaper indicated that the transfers of Russian forces since last April to the border shows that the Kremlin is leaning toward implementing its offensive plans. In addition, the details of the possible Russian attack plan have been evaluated by several officials within NATO and the security community. According to a security source described by Bild as high level, the attack, if approved by Putin, would launch simultaneously from north of Crimea through separatist regions to east and north. The newspaper added that NATO and the Ukrainian military intelligence expect the attack to take place in the end of January and the beginning of February 2022, in the event that Ukraine and the alliance do not respond to Putin's demands. The newspaper explained that the attack will be on 3 stages, and each stage could be the last in the process in the event that there is Western reaction to the invasion. This comes as Mr. Putin has recently demanded a legally binding guarantee that NATO will not expand east, including to Ukraine, with the Kremlin saying that the Russian leader plans to raise this issue in a call with US President Joe Biden.
Belarusian government to impose sanctions on anti-Belarusian countries in response to the sanctions imposed by the US and its allies. Belarus is planning to impose sanctions on airlines from the EU and Britain. Belarusian government is planning to ban a number of goods from countries applying anti-Belarusian sanctions. The Belarusian authorities have been accused of orchestrating the migrant crisis on its borders with Poland to create a military crisis in the region. However, decision makers and officials in the country denied all the accusation. Putin and Biden will speak in an online conference this Tuesday as the tension is rising between them over the Russian troops in Ukraine borders. According to Kremlin spokesman, the head will decide how long the conference will take.
Biden and Putin haven't spoken since July, when Biden demanded that Putin control the cyber groups. Thus, the leaders will speak in a video conference this Tuesday as tensions are rising between them over the Russian troops in the Ukrainian borders. According to Kremlin spokesman, the heads will decide how long the conference will be. According to a U.S. administration source, Russia has gathered some 70,000 troops along its Ukrainian border, and as stated by Ukraine's military minister, Russia has over 94,000 troops near Ukraine and in Russia-annexed Crimea, and that Putin would face significant dangers if he took action with an invasion. Biden declared that what he's doing is putting together what he believes will be the most complete and meaningful collection of actions against Putin. U.S. and Russia relations have been strained since Biden took the office, and the U.S. administration imposed measures against Russia and warned Putin about cyber activity against American companies.
British and American diplomats insisted deals within reach and would benefit everyone, while Iran insists on its position. The last chance of preventing Iran going nuclear gets underway this week. As nuclear talks resume next week, the results may lead to reaching a deal or facing regional escalation and conflicts. Marwa Bel'awar clarified.
The Iran talks commencement in Vienna to save the 2015 Iran nuclear deal set on pause until next week, due to Europe and US concerns. After the progress made in the first 6 rounds of talks, US and Europe officials voiced disappointment and concern on the 7th round of talks, as diplomats claim Tehran is walking back almost all the difficult compromises crafted after months of hard work in previous rounds of talks and demanding major changes. Negotiators are going to return to their capitals to assess the situation and pursue instructions to see whether gaps can be closed or not before resuming the talks next week. The defined aim of US after resuming the talks is to see if the two can revive a 2015 nuclear deal, but diplomats claim that Washington's unspoken goal may be to win support from China and Russia to pressure Iran if the talks fail. European partners at the talks and representatives from Russia and China were quite taken aback with Iran's negotiating position, rejecting the outcomes of 6 rounds of talks in the 7th round.
We don't want to waste time for nothing, for blah 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 general discussions. We need a concrete result, and such a result, this is our conviction, is feasible. Although it will be extremely difficult for us to overcome the existing differences.
Why the United States and the United Kingdom insisted that the breakout time for Iran should be 1 year as a minimum requirement, while allowing Australia to have a breakout time of only a few days or even hours by virtue of acquiring readily manufactured nuclear weapon materials directly.
Russia has been supportive, particularly at the Vienna-based UN nuclear regulator that monitors Iran's eroding compliance. On the other hand, China has weakened US force by buying Iranian oil, throwing Tehran an economic lifeline in violation of US sanctions. This month's talks are the last chance to measure whether Iran wants to revive the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. However, if Iran sticks to its position, which it says that it will not be changed, Washington will try to win support from China and Russia to put pressure on Tehran.
Situation in Iraq is still living a strong tide on different levels, and at least 6 Peshmerga militants were killed as 2 attacks took place in the previous 2 days. The first attack targeted Kara Salam village in Erbil, while the second one was Lohaban village in the same Kurdish area. This comes amid critical unrest that the country is living, especially during the last period. Osama Yadi will clarify the situation.
A terrorist attack was operated on Sunday by the so-called Islamic State forces, which are considered a terrorist group. The operation took place near Karasalam village in northern Iraq. The launched attack killed at least 6 Peshmerga soldiers and wounded 6 civilians. According to a Peshmerga colonel, the terrorist fighters used hit-and-run tactics in night attacks over their position, and he added that more forces were dispatched in the area so as to fend off any further attacks in the region. In addition, Iraqi army mobilized more forces to the area in bid to reinforce the army troops inside as well as securing the area. The militant terrorist group took over another village in northern Iraq. Lohaban village was attacked a day after Karasalam attack. However, no confirmation was announced by the Iraqi government. The 2 villages are located in remote areas in Kurdish region Erbil, where the so-called Islamic State terrorist group held regular attacks. But the last 2 operations are the first of a kind. These attacks targeted and took control of residential areas near a main road. The area where the 2 attacks were held is disputed over by the Iraqi government in Baghdad and the Kurdish regional government in Erbil. This recent uptick in attacks coincides with general unrest and dissatisfaction with the Iraqi government in Baghdad, especially after the last demonstrations of Green Zone area in rejection of the parliamentary election result and the assassination attempt of the Iraqi Prime Minister.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrived to Qatar for a 2-day visit aimed at enhancing cooperation between the 2 allies. Erdogan and Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani will preside over the 7th Qatar-Turkey Supreme Strategic Committee meeting on Tuesday. As part of the Turkish visit to Qatar, Qatar's foreign minister has restated in a joint press conference his country's position on addressing the situation in Afghanistan, saying that Doha will continue to work towards enhancing humanitarian and economic efforts in Afghanistan. A Turkish delegation of minister and business leaders will also meet with the Qatari counterparts. Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia de facto ruler, has begun a tour of Gulf Arab states ahead of an annual Gulf summit this month, which coincides with important discussion aimed at recovering a nuclear accord between Iran and the West. According to Saudi television press, Mohammed will go to Amman, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. On Monday, he will make his first stop in Oman. It is worth mentioning that Saudi Arabia's strong ties with the UAE have been shaken these past few years by differences over the Yemen conflict and growing competition for business and investment. The Tripoli Court of Appeal on Monday overturned an earlier verdict to exclude Libyan world war Khalifa Haftar from his month presidential elections, according to local media. Last week, a court in the western city of Zawiya issued a ruling exclude Haftar from vote. Last month, a Libyan court had disqualified Saif al-Islam al-Qaddafi, the son of the former strongman Muammar al-Qaddafi, from the polls before he appealed the verdict. Libya's presidential and parliamentary elections are set to take place on December 24th under a United Nations sponsored agreement reached by Libyan politic rivals during a meeting in Tunisia last November. Libyans hope that the upcoming election will contribute to ending an armed conflict that has plagued the oil-rich country for years. Adama Barrow was declared winner in the Gambian presidential election. Adama Barrow will be in office for a second term, a new era for Gambia after Yahya Jammeh ruled over the country for 22 years. More with Nabil Khazin.
Adama Barrow comfortably won a second term in the Gambia's presidential election, the first since former strongman Yahya Jammeh fled into exile in 2017. Thousands of supporters were celebrating following the announcement of the results. The new president in the Gambia, Adama Barrow, received around 53% of Saturday's vote.
Having been the lucky person to be chosen by you, I sincerely assure you, each and every one of you, that I will do all I can and utilize every resource at my disposal to make the Gambia a better place for us all.
Osaino Darboe, Barrow's nearest rival, got around 28% of votes. Darboe and other candidates say they could not accept the results of the poll.
We are concerned that there has been an inordinate delay in the announcement of the results. 2, a number of issues have been raised by our agents and representatives at the polling stations, the centers, and at the IEC headquarters. As a result, the representatives of the aforementioned candidates at the IEC headquarters refused to endorse.
Saturday's crucial election were perceived as a test for the democratic transition in Gambia, a country where former President Yahya Jammeh ruled for 22 years after seizing power in a coup in 1994. Jammeh fled to exile in Equatorial Guinea in 2016. Adama Barrow, the new Gambian president, was then chosen by a coalition of 7 opposition parties as their endorsed candidate for the 2016 Gambian presidential election. Barrow defeated Yahya Jammeh and won with 43% of the vote. People in Gambia hope the new era will bring them peace and prosperity in a country that has long lived in persecution and poverty.
Sahel region is witnessing an unprecedented instability and insecurity, conflict of interest between superpowers, civil wars, and terrorist activists, which resulted in hundreds of people killed in Niger and Mali. More to be clarified with Hussam.
At least 12 Nigerian soldiers and dozens of terrorists were killed in intense fighting in western Niger, inside the so-called Three Borders area, the Nigerian Ministry of Justice announced. In Niger also, an attack by suspected rebels on an army camp in the West African crisis state killed a total of 79 attackers and 29 troops, according to official reports. The attack was on the base of the G5 Sahel, a group in which Mauritania, Niger, Chad, Mali, and Burkina Faso are fighting together against insurgents in the Sahel region. In Mali, 2 explosions occurred in 2 United Nations camps in the city of Gao, causing damage without any casualties. In Mali also, it is reported that at least 31 civilians were killed and 8 others wounded in an attack by armed men on a bus. The attack took place in the east of the country near the city of Bandiagara in the Mopti region.
To the sport news over all European championships in this wrap-up.
Spurs are 1 point ahead of the United, with a game in hand after cruising to 3-0 against bottom side Norwich, their 3rd straight victory in the Premier League. Lucas Moura opened the scoring in the 10th minute after a nice piece of skill to around the Norwich defender. He played the 1-2 with Son Heung-min, turned his mark and thundered an unstoppable drive into the top corner from 20 yards. Tottenham doubled their lead midway through the second half when Davinson Sanchez smashed home a loose ball from a corner and Son made it 3-0 in the 77th minute. Ralf Rangnick's reign at Manchester United got off to a winning start thanks to a stunning strike from the much-maligned Fred to beat Crystal Palace 1-0 at the Old Trafford on Sunday. Fred, who had been a target for much of criticism towards the end of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's time as manager, produced a moment of magic with a curling effort on his weaker right foot 30 minutes from time to snatch a crucial victory. Cuadrado struck a direct from a corner that sailed over the head of Genoa goalkeeper Salvador Sirigu in the 9th minute, with Dybala drilling a second late on to send Juve up to 5th place. The victory begins an important month for Massimiliano Allegri's side, who will help a run of favourable fixture can allow to them close the 7th-point gap to the Champions League places. Juve are 11 points drift of leaders, AC Milan ahead of match against Venezia, Bologna and Cagliari in the run-up to Christmas and the winter break. The former Monaco, Lyon and Leicester City boss paid the price for winning just 2 of 70 matches this term, leaving Saint-Etienne behind Metz on goal difference at the foot of the table. Saint-Etienne released a statement that said Puel had been relieved of his duties in charge of the first team until further choice. He will meet with club management on Monday. It effectively brings an end to Puel's 3-year spell in charge at the club that was put up for sale in April.
This is today's news. We have got an eye over. And thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Good night. See you tomorrow.